Hi, my name is Marc Okrand. What I do most of the time is I oversee the creation of closed caption television programs for both local stations and networks and cable and so forth. But I also created the Vulcan and Klingon dialogue heard in Star Trek 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so forth. The whole connection with linguistics in Star Trek for me actually started not with Star Trek 3, but with Star Trek 2. There's a short scene in Star Trek 2 where Spock and Saavik talk to each other on the Enterprise. And as originally shot, the two actors are speaking in English. But they wanted to change it so that they're speaking Vulcan to each other, and they just put in subtitles. But rather than reshooting the whole thing, what they decided to do was just dub in dialogue that would sound very different from English, but match the lip movements that were already there. So they figured they would hire a linguist, someone who was good at phonetics, you know, the speech sounds, who would know what sounds look alike and what sounds look different and make the lips match. And I told him I thought that was a great idea. So I made up these 4 lines of Vulcan. And after I did that, I got in my car and was driving away, and I was thinking, oh, I just taught Mr. Spock how to speak Vulcan. I thought, that's it, I can die now, everything is okay. And I thought that would be the end of my connection with Star Trek, because I wasn't counting on it in the first place, you know. About a year and a half later, I got a call from Harv Bennett, who said, we're making a new movie, Star Trek 3. The bad guys, the villains, are going to be the Klingons. He says, I think it would be a good idea for the Klingons to have their own language. Would you like to do that? You did the Vulcan, would you like to do the Klingon? And every once in a while, you're presented with a decision in life that's not very difficult to make. And that was one of them, so I said, yes. And so that's how I made up the Klingon. But the Klingon and the Vulcan was a very, very different experience, because the Vulcan, as I say, was matching sounds to lip movements already on the film, whereas Klingon, we started from scratch. When it came time to make up the language, I had to make a couple of decisions. I had to decide what it's going to sound like. I had to decide what the grammar was going to be like. I had to make up a lot of words for the language. For the words, actually, that was the easy part, because I only had to make up the dialogue that was in the film. The original intent was not to make up a full language that you could talk about anything in and carry on great philosophical discussions. The original intent was to make up lines of dialogue for Star Trek 3. So if the word was in the film, in the script for the film, I would make up a word. And if the word wasn't in the script for the film, I probably didn't make up the word. But to start with the sounds, because I had to figure out what it's going to sound like, there was a couple of influences. The most important one was Star Trek the Motion Picture. We've never heard Klingon before. In the original series, they didn't speak Klingon.
We like the Enterprise. We really do.
That sagging old rust bucket is designed like a garbage scow. Half the quadrant knows it. That's why they're learning to speak Klingonese.
But we then hear no examples of Klingonese. We don't know what it sounds like. So the only Klingon we have from the original series is people's names. There's Kang and Kor and Koloth and a woman named Mara. That's it. But those are real Klingon words, because those are their names. So that has to be incorporated into the language. But in Star Trek the Motion Picture, at the beginning, there's real Klingon. There's real sentences with real subtitles. So that has to be incorporated into the language, too. Now, I came to Star Trek after that, because I started with Star Trek 2. But the Klingon for Star Trek the Motion Picture, I found out afterwards. I didn't know this when